Hi, everybody. So what I'm going to do now is give you the second half of notes from the screencast that we did last week. So I think it's page 16 of your INB should have a little booklet that you glued into it. It may be page 17. But you filled out the passive transport side, so now I want you guys to fill out the rest of the information on active transport. So we're still on the topic of how things get into and out of cells, and we've been talking about how things naturally move from a high concentration to a low concentration, and that was diffusion. And then we're doing a lab where you're learning about how water molecules diffuse from a high concentration to a low concentration, and that's osmosis. Both those things are passive transport. Passive transport requires no energy. The opposite of that is active transport, and you might guess that active transport requires the use of energy to get things to enter and leave the cell. So you need to know that there are three types of active transport. So when we looked at pictures of the plasma or the cell membrane before, we've seen things that are look like some sort of little objects that are embedded within the two layers of the plasma membrane, of the cell membrane. These embedded objects are called transport proteins. They're sort of like passageways through the cell. They help carry substances, sometimes they're large, across the cell membrane. So remember that diffusion is when molecules go from a high concentration to a low concentration. But what if cells need things that are in lower concentrations outside of the cell? So here's my cell. There it is. There's a transport protein. And there is waste on the inside, but there's more waste on the outside. But that cell membrane, so that cell still needs to get rid of that waste. So we need it to go from low concentration to high concentration. Well, some cells sometimes use transport proteins that can pump things out. So they're sort of like pumps, sort of like a sump pump that you might have in your basement to pump out water. Well, you have to plug that in to make it work. It needs energy. These transport proteins are also like that, where they move things from low concentration to an area of high. So they're going in the opposite direction. So here's the inside of the cell. There's my transport protein. I have some large molecules that I need to get rid of. I have an even more on the outside, so it's not going to diffuse out. Instead, it goes against the concentration gradient. It pumps out those molecules, and it uses energy in the process. Okay, so that is one sort of active transport, when this uses transport proteins. The second type is a type of active transport called endocytosis. And it's a little bit helpful to know that endo means into. So endocytosis is really cool. It's when the cell membrane actually physically changes shape, surrounds the particle, and allows it to enter the cell. And by the way, it's the way amoebas actually capture their food. So this is our friendly amoeba right here. Here he is. There's his nucleus. There's step one. Out here is some lunch. Okay, but that lunch is just too big to get in through the cell membrane. So it can't diffuse in. So the amoeba is like a shapeshifter. It actually changes its shape. It takes its cell membrane and it moves it to trap those particles inside, there's the nucleus, inside the cell. And then, let's get the third one. So then those arms, there's the nucleus, there's the particles we wanted inside, actually fuse together, and it creates a little vacuole now that contains the food. So for those cell membrane to change shape, it needs energy, okay? So active transport, 3 types. The first type is transport proteins, second type is endocytosis, and the third type is the opposite of endocytosis. It's exocytosis. Exo means exits, okay? So the cell membrane, with the help of a vacuole, allows large particles to leave the cell. So if I were going to draw that out in like 3 steps, here's step number 1. So here is a vacuole. It's got some waste in it that we want to get rid of. In step number 2, that vacuole actually fuses or joins with the cell membrane. And then in step number 3, the cell membrane actually opens up where that vacuole was, and it allows that waste to leave, and it takes energy. All right, guys, so that is the end of the information that you need to know about active transport.